Hi, my name is Joe, and welcome to my YouTube channel where I review martial arts books and talk about martial arts adjacent topics. Today I'm going to be reviewing Real Punching by Geoff Thompson, originally published in 1992. The copy I have was published in 2000. Geoff Thompson, for those who don't know, he became rather famous in the self-protection community, particularly in the UK. He was a karate black belt that recognized that he did not feel confident in using his skills, so he decided to become a bouncer for like 9 years. That experience led him to write a number of books, including an autobiographical book called Watch My Back that we're probably going to cover at some point. He also put out a series of books, the one that I will call the Real series, which covers that material. It has that sort of title: Real Punching, Real Kicking, Real Knees, Elbows, and Headbutts, and I think Real Grappling. He's also put out a series on groundwork and on takedowns, and also has a few other books on other martial arts and self-defense related topics. I think at this point he is more or less stopped or stepped away from the martial arts world and is getting more into his writing career. In this particular book, he's covering, as the title says, real punches, mostly or entirely drawn from Western boxing. And he has an assortment of chapters on, what you'd expect to be related to that. So we have basic punching mechanics, we have stance, we have footwork. He also covers topics that are more pertinent to self-defense. For instance, he has, how to take this punching skill set, this knowledge, and how it works against grappling, how it works against kicking. He has a chapter, for instance, on cheap shots, and not defense against cheap shots, but how to use cheap shots, because a big part of his self-defense philosophy is preemptive striking. There are also, more information on other types of punches. For instance, angular punches, which are those that don't fall into the nice, clean, hook or uppercut, lines. So, that's where you get your shovel hooks, is where you get your overhands. And also sections on combinations, feinting, how to draw attacks. In other words, how to deliberately leave openings so that your opponent attacks you first. But because you're expecting it, you can use that to your advantage and counter. So for something that doesn't really sell itself as a boxing book, there's a lot of good boxing related information here. There's also a nice bonus chapter on double hip movement, which is found in some karate styles, and it's written by Peter Consterdine, I hope I'm pronouncing that name correctly, who, along with Mr. Thompson, I believe they founded the British Self-Defense Association. The chapters on punching go over the fundamental, but there's an individual chapter on jabs, an individual chapter on the rear straight, individual chapter on hooks, individual one on uppercuts. The chapter on hooks covers what type of fist position to use depending on the sort of range you're in, which is an often debated topic. So I think it's a good bit of information that Mr. Thompson included, what his personal preferences are when it comes to using that particular tool and why he's chosen these fist positions based on range. The chapter on kicking has techniques that you will find in karate. He's sort of drawing from that background. Um, Again, the objective with that chapter isn't so much, here are kicks and also how to defend them. It's how would you defend against these types of kicks, because we're talking about, using your hands as your primary weapon. But you will see things like Gedan Barai, the downward sweeping motion of the arm. One thing of note when it comes to the chapters on kick and punch defense, not only are they extensive in their means of defense, but in every instance they also include a counter. So, a lean back from a punch, let's follow with a rear straight, for instance. This will give the reader, more than just here's a defense. It's here's a defense, and by the way, this is the best counter, or the most instinctive or appropriate counter to throw off of it. I think that's very useful, especially for people who are beginners to that style of punching and style of defense. So when it comes to pros and cons, the pros are it's a very good boxing book and is sort of covering boxing as self-defense. In addition to teaching the fundamentals of, stance, footwork, punching mechanics, and, more advanced topics such as, drawing and, different combinations and feinting. The topics on, how to defend against kicks, drills covering, how to prepare yourself from someone who wants to get in close and grab you, the use of cheap shots, that seems like an extension onto what would be a very solid boxing book on its own on how to apply this to a more street style environment. And it's pretty dense when it comes to the information presented. If there are any cons, I think this is mostly just personal preference. I would probably have organized it a little bit differently. The section on stance comes a few chapters before the section on footwork. I guess I'm just used to seeing those two together because, okay, now you can stand, now here's how to move, and now that you have a stable, mobile platform from which to launch your punches, here's how to punch. But past that, it gets maybe a little bit redundant with some of his other books, but that doesn't take away from this book if you're not getting any of his other books. So there isn't a whole lot that I can point at and really say that it's a large negative. So who would I recommend this to? I think if you have a competent boxing background, then most of the first parts of this book probably aren't for you, but if you are interested in converting that boxing skill to a more self-defense environment, this might be a solid book to pick up. If you have no knowledge of boxing and the boxing defenses and you'd like to learn a little bit of that, this would also be a pretty good book to pick up. I'd say maybe if you practice a more traditional striking art, this might be a pretty good supplement for what you already have under your belt. So overall, a really solid book on the subject that it covers, even though what it's covering seems a little bit isolated. So yeah, learn how to punch for self-defense. Learn punching, boxing's place in a self-defense environment. So that's all I have for this week. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.